In South Africa, major roads in Cape Town have been closed following protests by residents against poverty and crime. Police authorities have arrested at least 8 people for public violence following run-ins with police that resulted in the disruption of traffic. One of the protest organizers blames the police for instigating clashes with protesters. They accuse them of protecting the interests of the rich by not allowing their protest on the highway. South Africa's Home Affairs Minister has announced a number of measures to ease travel to the country for business and tourism. This is part of the economic stimulus and recovery plan unveiled by President Cyril Ramaphosa last Friday. Minister Govt also addressed what's being done about the visa processing challenges Nigerians are currently facing.
Some aspects of the regulations are new, others are revised existing ones, particularly the one regarding those traveling with minors.
Immigration officials will only insist on documentation by exception in high-risk situations rather than for all travelers, in line with practice by several other countries. Rather than denying entry where documentation is absent, travelers will be given an opportunity to prove parental consent.
Nigeria is among South Africa's top 10 tourism markets, but the only one without visa waiver for regular passport holders. We asked if this may change soon, along with the mostly stressful visa processing experiences many Nigerians go through.
We are in discussions with Nigeria about easing visa requirements for now as a first step towards an eventual visa exemption. The issues of VFS in Nigeria, I just need to get to the bottom of what they are so that we understand them and act on them. If they are of any major concern. But the introduction of e-visas is really going to solve the lives of many people.
We have deployed one of our top managers in Lagos who went there last week, Thursday. He has just started over the weekend. I was communicating with him over the weekend. He has just identified a number of challenges there. And I'm sure very soon we are going to see an increase in the number of applications that are processed quickly.
The Home Affairs Department also hopes an e-visa process, which will be piloted in New Zealand by April next year, will improve efficiency in all rollout countries, Nigeria included. The critical skills list is being reviewed, and qualifying foreign students who graduate in South Africa will be allowed to apply for permanent residence in the country.
Also in the works are a 3-year multiple entry visa to trusted frequent visitors to South Africa, and the 10-year multiple entry visa for business people as well as academics coming to South Africa. An international travel advisory is expected to be released by the end of October 2018, giving more details. From Pretoria, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari is asking for concerted efforts to achieve world peace through ending the prevalence of poverty and ensuring that human rights are not violated. The president is also asking for a world that is just peaceful, inclusive and fair. President Buhari made the call while delivering a statement at the Nelson Mandela Peace Summit, a high-level plenary meeting of the UN General Assembly. He wants nations to place human dignity at the center of all actions while pledging support for women as catalysts for development.
As we herald the Nelson Mandela Decade of Peace, Nigeria calls on all states to recognize that the United Nations is built on pillars of peace and security, development and human rights, which are the foundations for our collective well-being, and emphasize that there can be no peace without sustainable development, and no sustainable development without peace and the full respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms for all. By this declaration, we recognize the contribution of women to the advancement of societies and their contribution to the prevention and the resolution of conflicts. We are committed to the promotion and protection of the rights of all women, as well as providing an enabling environment for them to realize their full potential. We also recognize that inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all peoples of the world is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. We declare that racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance present the very opposite of the noble purposes of the United Nations.
Still at the Peace Summit, South Africa gifted the United Nations with a statue of Nelson Mandela to honor the late president and anti-apartheid hero's 100th birthday. Speaking in New York, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the Nelson Mandela statue is the only life-size statue at the UN headquarters, signifying the role he played in unifying the world under the banner of peace and conflict resolution. The United Nations held the Nelson Mandela Peace Summit a day before world leaders began addressing the UN General Assembly.
20 years ago, almost to the day, President Nelson Mandela addressed the UN General Assembly for the last time. He said, "We must ask a question which might sound naive to those who have elaborated sophisticated arguments to justify their refusal to eliminate these terrible and terrifying weapons of mass destruction. Why do they need them anyway?" Close quotes, he asked. To this day, his question has been met with no satisfactory answer. The truth is that there can be no justification for the existence of weapons that carry with them the potential to extinguish life on this planet. We therefore applaud the adoption by the General Assembly last year of the groundbreaking treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons.
This year we mark the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Almost exactly 20 years ago, Nelson Mandela spoke about the landmark document in his hall. He urged all leaders to have the courage to ensure that at last we build a human world consistent with the provisions of that historic declaration. Those were words of Nelson Mandela. Today, with human rights under growing pressure around the world, we would be well served by reflecting on the example of this outstanding man.